Coming up on today's Locked On NHL, we have a big domino that's dropped Alex DeBrincat to Detroit, and what does that do to shake up the Atlantic Division? We're also going to get to the Metropolitan Division because Erik Karlsson is reportedly rumored to two destinations, the Pittsburgh Penguins and Carolina Hurricanes. All that's coming up, plus a look at the top remaining free agents, and are there some fits in the Eastern Conference? That's coming up. You're listening to Locked On NHL. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen on this Wednesday, July 12th. Today's episode is brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. It's the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started today. I'm Ross Levitan. You can find me at Locked On Senators 5 days a week. Today, I'm joined by David Morassutti from Locked On Leafs. You can go subscribe to Locked On Leafs, Locked On Senators, and all the great shows across the Locked On Network. Every Wednesday is the Eastern Conference Roundup on Locked On NHL. And David, I have to start with the Alex DeBrincat trade. I know it was late on Sunday night, but where were you when you heard the news, and what was your immediate reaction?
Yeah, I was at the batting cages. I was just, hanging out, hitting some dingers, and then all of a sudden I see DeBrincat. The stuff, it finally went down. It's almost like you've just been waiting for, like, you already knew that trade between Ottawa and Detroit was going to happen. It's just one of those where you're just like, okay, someone's got to pivot here and finally get the deal done. It just seems like they found a way to get that common ground and get a deal done.
Yeah, with Alex DeBrincat, it sounded like he really wanted that 8-year term or to make the free agent push next season, which, I mean, you see with the Leafs, these 1-year contracts, a lot of players are setting themselves up, hoping, expecting, dare I say, the salary cap to go up next summer. But he ends up settling a 4-year contract term where he'll still be able to cash in next contract. He'll be 29 when this deal's done. He had a very disappointing year in Ottawa. I think it's fair to say 27 goals, but only 12 of them came at 5-on-5. A bit of a power play merchant, had some great overtime goals as well. The chances were there. And that's why I think it's a great bet to quote you, because you're at the batting cage. I'll say it's a home run swing from Steve Yzerman, getting a kid come into his hometown. You know he's going to be motivated. Heck, he was wearing a Detroit Pistons hat in his press conference. He wants to be there, and they need him. But I couldn't help but laugh, David, because I was in that position that Locked On Red Wings was in this week. I was there last summer, where Senators fans were like, okay, this is what's going to push us into a playoff spot. Sure enough, it wasn't enough. Now, I think Detroit could be in a similar spot where, yeah, it's a great move and it's a long-term move, but I don't see them as a playoff team next year. Do you think that this gets them right into the conversation, or are they still a year or two away in the Yzer plan for them to get back to that area?
I think they're still a few years away. Like, you look at the roster, yeah, they made some interesting additions, but like, I look at that blue line and I look at their goaltenders, that doesn't scream to me a playoff team, right? We like, Detroit really hasn't had issues scoring all that much, although they could always use some more scoring. They got some guys, like Lucas Raymond, he's going to build up into that NHL goal scorer. David Prawn's an okay goal scorer, but I look at that blue line, like, their highest paid defenseman right now is Ben Sherratt. Obviously, he's not their best defenseman. But like, to me, like, there's so many question marks on that team. Goaltending is the big one for me. Ville Husso and James Reimer does not scream to me as a playoff caliber goaltending tandem. Like, they're going to be a tandem that's going to keep them out of I think a bottom 10 in terms of the standings. But I think they're in that position right now where they're trying to get better, but they haven't made that big leap forward. Even though they got DeBrincat, which is a big coup for them, that's, in my opinion, that doesn't solve all their issues.
No, me neither. The decor, and that's typically the last thing that finishes developing. I know Ottawa, for example, and I will compare and contrast, and I want your opinion. We'll throw Buffalo in the mix too. The 3 Atlantic Division teams that have all drafted high for consistent number of years, up until, I guess, Ottawa didn't have a first the last 2 years. But besides that, Like Ottawa's finally kind of rounded out their decor, and they had to give up this year's first to do it, to get Jacob Chychrun to kind of, round it out. And with Ottawa having Jake Sanderson, Buffalo has Owen Power, and they're ahead of it being NHLers already. Whereas I think Seaman Edvinsson with Detroit is going to need, I think, a year or two extra, but at the same time could be that same level of defenseman when he does make a full-time jump. He got a little taste, 9 games last year, had 2 goals, looked decent. Okay, nothing to ruin the outlook of his long-term future. But we also know that the Detroit Red Wings historically have over-marinated their prospects so that when they come up, they're ready. There's no real kind of learning curve as much when they get to the National Hockey League level. So from that standpoint, I'm kind of, I don't know if with you is the right word, because you did say a couple years away. I think they're going to be improved based on last year, but not by much. I still think that you're banking on too many ifs to say they're going to be a playoff team. I think you need a huge step from Lucas Raymond, who kind of, like, he had flashes last year for sure, but he's still a young player in this league, getting his feet under him. I think you already saw the turnover now. Philip Zadina, they cut bait with him. He wanted a fresh start. Not that he was really producing, but there's a lot of kind of things that I just think they're an okay team, but certainly the future looks bright. Their decor prospect wise, I don't know if there's a stable in the NHL that's as deep on the back end, but they're all 19, 20 years old. So I think if you're a Red Wings fan, be ecstatic that you got Alex DeBrincat. It's a huge addition for the team, for the culture, for everything they're trying to build there. But I might do a word of caution as a Senators fan who literally watched the exact same narratives play out among the fan base. Be calm, be patient, and good things will happen. But I see Buffalo and Ottawa as miles ahead of them, at least going into this upcoming season.
I do too. Like Detroit, I know that the Yzer plan has been around since 2019. We have to consider the pandemic, it impacted that in a way. And they haven't had that top tier, like, first overall pick. They haven't had that.
I don't think there's a team that's had worse draft lottery luck than the Detroit Red Wings.
I think you're right. Like, maybe you look at like Arizona or Anaheim, like they probably wish they had better draft lottery luck. But I mean, Anaheim at least had top 2.
Yeah, at least they had top 3 picks. Like the Detroit Red Wings have finished like 29th. I want to say they finished almost dead last one year too, but they haven't drafted in this stretch top 3. They've been the kings of 6th overall. Philip Zadina 6th overall, Edvinsson 6th overall. Like Sider 6th overall as well. Like they're right outside that top 6 or top 5. And then Lucas Raymond was 4th overall. And that year that they took Lucas Raymond, they finished, I want to say they had 39 points in 71 games. Like there's teams that had that many wins that barely made the playoffs.
Yeah. It's crazy. Like that. And when you're doing these rebuilds, that is like part of the issue. You need luck, and you also need to find diamonds in the rough too. And I don't think Detroit's really found any players who are just like, wow, they got this guy out of nowhere. They used to do that, right? Lidstrom, Datsuk, Zetterberg. You look at the ability to draft and find guys in places that others weren't really looking. Detroit really hasn't done that as much lately. I feel like that's something they're going to have to get back to doing if they're going to want to, compete in this Atlantic Division.
So I'll take Detroit out of the mix. We just covered them, I'd say. But Buffalo or Ottawa, and you're Leafs guy, and the Leafs have a very fair chance to win the division. If they do, which one of these potential wildcard teams would you least like to see in the first round?
I probably say Ottawa based on what the rosters look like right now. To me, I don't need, like, Buffalo is still their goaltending. Unless they go out and get a good goaltender, like looking at making.
Levi he's going to be that, and at the end of the year showed a flash. If you're going to have playoff aspirations, relying on a 21-year-old is a lot to ask of that kid. And I think he's going to be a star. I really think he's going to be a star. But man, you could overwhelm a goalie. Like, it sucks for them that Craig Anderson retired, because it would have been a perfect like veteran stabilizer who can play a ton of games when healthy. And I'm curious, because right now it's him, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, and Erik Karlsson. Like, that's your trio in goal.
That to me, like that doesn't work. Like Devin Levi will get there eventually. I want to see him get some games in the AHL and get a string of games as a starter to get used to that, get that used to that pro hockey life and playing against pros. For me, like Ottawa did the right thing and when they got a guy like Korpisalo, which I think maybe that's someone that Buffalo looked at and it didn't happen. Some of the other prices have been big, or maybe they're going to make a trade for one. But I feel like Ottawa's found a way to.
You know who's going to be a great fit? You know who would be a great fit there is Connor Hellebuyck.
Yeah, exactly. But Connor Hellebuyck, I feel like he's got a couple of teams that are kind of swarming around. Like New Jersey is a team. Their teams are like they're gonna have competition. I feel like Buffalo has the assets to get a deal like that done for sure.
They got the cap space. They have $6.7 million in cap space right now, and with nobody to sign as of yet.
Exactly.
They have no RFAs left to sign for this upcoming season.
Yeah, so I think that's it. Like if Buffalo finds a way to get a goaltender, you can maybe say them. Although they're a team that always has streaks. They're a very streaky team. But I think like Ottawa has the style of play that you kind of that fits more of the playoff mold. And that's where I think Ottawa.
They need to get through November. They've been so bad in November over the last 3 years, especially. It's wild. But to me, like Tim Stützle is going to be the X factor here. I just think that if you took all of Buffalo's roster and all of Ottawa's roster and put them together, Tage Thompson, there's certainly an argument to be made. But I think that overall, like obviously Thompson has the shot. He's 40 goal scorer. I'm not taking anything away from him. But I think Tim Stützle is going to crack 100 points this year in the National League. And I think that him, and then you look, the D-core, I think is pretty even. You have Dahlin, you have Power. You've got great talent in Buffalo. But I think, you're going to come down to goaltending here. I probably give the coaching edge to Buffalo as well. So I probably give the edge to Buffalo in overall depth at forward, because I think they have a lot of young kids who can play on the third line even, and maybe a step ahead of Ottawa. I'm trying to be unbiased too, because I don't want Sabres fans getting in the comments just saying, I'm taking Ottawa all day. But I think Ottawa's top four is Shabbat, Chychrun, Zub, and Sanderson. I'm taking that top four over Buffalo's, and I'm taking Korpisalo over Buffalo's goalies this upcoming year. A 5-year span, I probably take Levi over any of Ottawa's goalies, but it's going to be fun. I think that's going to be a really fun rivalry. And I hope so, at least, because right after the lockout in 04-05, they had back-to-back amazing playoff series where Buffalo got the win in 06, Ottawa got the win in 07, and neither of them have been able to meet again in games that matter ever since. I mean, Buffalo hasn't made the playoffs since 2011. So when we talk about comparing rebuilds, I think you do kind of have to mention that Buffalo is going on year 13 of the, I don't want to call it a rebuild, because obviously there's been different iterations of it. One could argue that when they traded Jack Eichel could have been the symbol of the start of this one. And what a home run they hit in that trade, eh? Like without even the first round pick, just getting Alex Tuck, who's been a comparable. But then, hey, counterpoint, Jack Eichel's got a Stanley Cup right now. So who really won the trade, right? But So win-win, we'll call that. But hey, it's going to be great to see, man, the Atlantic Division. If you're seeing a team's going to fall off, I'm sure as heck not saying I'm not saying Boston, because I did that last year and I looked like a fool. Like, is it Tampa that's getting a little older, or are you confident in your Leafs? Like, is there going to be a spot in the top three, or are these teams just strictly going to fight over a wild card spot? And Florida too.
I think a wild card is like, I think Florida, like, I thought Florida was taking a step back. They technically did. They went from first in the Atlantic to a wild card team and barely got in. Like, let's not forget that they got to first be able to get through a whole 82 game season. Now they don't have Alex Lyon to save their bacon either. I mean, Spencer Knight looks like he's going to be coming back. That's actually news that dropped today. He's back on the ice, so he's going in the right direction there. So maybe that's a nice boost for Florida there. But yeah, Tampa, again, lost more key bodies, right? Alex Killorn, that's a big loss for that team, right? And you start to see some cracks in the armor there, but maybe if they get healthy again and not having a full playoff run for a change, some guys are able to get some time to get some R&R that they haven't had. Like, this reminds me of the Kings, right? The Kings had all those long playoff series, and then eventually it just caught up to them, like the fatigue got there. So I think that's something you can see happening with Tampa. Boston, it all depends on if Bergeron's coming back. If Bergeron's back, they're a team that can again contend to be a playoff team. And if their goaltenders can replicate what they did last year, they're a playoff team. But it's going to be tough. I think the other teams are going to have to hope that somebody slips a little bit, or it's the wild card. I mean, Ottawa was close. Buffalo was 1 point out. You just gotta. I think right now that's where you got to aim for, and then hope that some other things go your way.
Let us know in the comments, who do you think the Atlantic Division teams are that will make the playoffs this upcoming season? Really curious to see all your notes on YouTube. You can follow the show, subscribe, Locked On NHL. Coming up next, let's take a move over to the Metropolitan Division, where Keandre Miller signs a very team-friendly extension. And is Erik Karlsson potentially going to join forces with the team that ended the closest run he ever got to the Stanley Cup final? That's next. You're listening to Locked On NHL.
Yes, and today's Locked On NHL episode is brought to you by Birddogs. If you want a product that's going to make you look good but also feel good, Birddogs is the right pick for you. Their stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit smaller through the thigh and leg while giving you a truly sculpted look. Birddogs shorts do exactly that. The same thing as Lululemon's, but fit way better. They don't have that stiff, restricting cotton. They found a way to fix those issues by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks like khakis but stretches so you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement, and also have that sweet anti-sweat wicking fabric. And also, if you want to get in on Birddogs, go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL or enter the Locked On NHL promo code for free Yeti style tumbler. Look at this beauty, Yeti style tumbler. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL or promo code LockedOnNHL for that free Yeti style tumbler. You won't want to take your bird dogs off. We promise you that.
Welcome back to Locked On NHL. Shout out to the everydayers out there. We are free and available Monday through Friday on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Ross Levitan. It's the Battle of Ontario edition against David Morisuti of Locked On Leafs. And David, I know we're just talking. I teed you up, Sens, Sabres. Give me a Battle of Ontario. It's been too long. We need it so badly. It would just be fun. And now I feel better, because if the Leafs had not won a playoff series since beating Ottawa, and then if you beat us again, like to end the curse, that there's no recovering from that as a Senators fan. So I'm almost happy that it was Tampa, and then we'll have a nice little series there with the Sens and Leafs, hopefully next spring. That would make for some very fun Locked On NHL crossovers. That's your team every day. And this next topic makes me a little sad, David. I have to admit, Erik Karlsson, I like having him out of sight, out of mind. It's like an ex. You don't want to go to their Instagram page. You don't want to see them. Just out of sight, out of mind. And that's how I felt with Erik Karlsson in San Jose. Of course, it helped having Tim Stützle end up being in the trade by way of proxy, with the draft pick ending up as Stützle. But I don't know if I can handle seeing Karlsson in a Pittsburgh Penguins jersey. Like, after that Kunitz goal, sorry for cursing. I know I just said Kunitz, but after that goal in 2017, man, I just can't do Pittsburgh. And how are they going to make it work with that aging core? Like, wouldn't him and Letang on the same team be a little too much of the same thing? We saw what happened when Erik Karlsson got to San Jose. He needs to be the alpha on a D-core. Like him and Brent Burns, they were too much of the same thing, wanting to have the puck on their stick at all times, which makes it interesting for me that Carolina is the other option, because Brent Burns is like, what the heck? I mean, I'm not saying that there's any animosity between the two guys, just their playing styles. I don't know that either of these teams is necessarily the best fit for Erik Karlsson.
Like, they both have, top tier offensive defensemen. They're also making quite a bit of coin, right? Like, Letang's not cheap. Burns is not cheap. I know they both had signed, their contracts are not what they used to be, especially Letang signing his new deal, but like
$6.1 million for the next 5 years for 36-year-old Chris Letang, and you're going to add Erik Karlsson, who has 5 years left at over $11 million.
And isn't the great defenseman too either. Like, you can't insulate when you have Letang and Karlsson. just like you can't, like in Carolina, you can't really insulate Karlsson when you also have Burns. That's something that I'm curious with both teams. I know that Carolina is always looking for a way to add offense. They're in on everyone. And we know Kyle Dubas, he's looking for that big splash ever since he took over the Pittsburgh job.
And I mean, Kyle Dubas admittedly is an Ottawa Senators fan growing up, and you saw it in Toronto. Like, obviously, Matt Murray had the Sioux connection too, but bringing in Jason Spezza, bringing in Victor Mete, Adam Gaudette. I know they're not like huge players, but Logan Shaw made the captain of the Marlies. And if he goes and brings in Erik Karlsson as one of his first moves in Pittsburgh, I will just have to shake my head and smile and just be like, I think Kyle Dubas might like the Sens more than I do, at least the former iterations of them. But no, all jokes aside, you just know what Erik Karlsson's going to bring in. You picture him with a pair with Jacob Slavin, and like that would be phenomenal because Erik Karlsson, it's almost like what's that movie with Liam Neeson where I have a very particular set of skills. Well, that's Erik Karlsson. Like, you know what you're going to get with him. The defense is not always going to be there. But when you score literally 100 points, who cares? Defense is for nerds. Go out there and put the puck in the net.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes your best defense is a good offense, right? That used to be the term. So I like for Pittsburgh, Letang's also had health issues, right? So you bring in Karlsson, he in a way kind of takes a little of that pressure off of Letang. Like Letang had a stroke last year. Let's not forget. Like, this is someone who I'm still surprised is still playing hockey at this rate. And maybe that's something that they might consider down the road too. If Letang feels like this is not something he can continue to do for as long as possible. So I do think Karlsson would improve any team he goes to because he's been playing on a pretty terrible San Jose Sharks team, right? Awful. There's something to be said about a guy going from a bad situation to a good situation. It kind of rejuvenizes them. Maybe he starts to play a little more defense and isn't worried too much about playing offense. I don't know. You know a lot more about Karlsson than I do. He's strictly an offensive guy, but I do think that he may be willing to make some of the sacrifices that he wasn't willing to make in San Jose.
Yeah, I just look at, Erik Karlsson, you just know that he is so talented offensively. This is the reigning Norris Trophy winner. But I point to this, his on-ice save percentage, okay, in the last number of years, okay? So, sorry, that's playoffs, which is also the last time he was in playoffs. It wasn't great for that. But his on-ice save percentage last year, get this, goalies stopped 86% of the shots when Erik Karlsson was on the ice. The other team was shooting 14%. Like, that to me is a bit of kind of what's wild about all this. And I mean, his last number of years before that, it was always 88, 89. That's 2 more goals every 100 shots, which is every few games. Like, that's not nothing. So I do think Erik Karlsson the next couple of years, he's shown this year that the injuries behind him, he played all 82 games this year. So impressive for a guy who really hadn't been able to stay healthy. It was a groin issue. Obviously, in Ottawa, he had the heel issue that he played through in the 2017 playoffs, but you're getting an elite talent. You're getting a generational talent in Erik Karlsson. And I mean, despite popular belief, I know that he came into the league and played 60 games as a teenager, so he's been in the league forever. He's only, 33. Like, I'd say he still probably has 2 or 3 really good offensive years left, but are you willing to bite the bullet, and how much money is San Jose going to be willing to retain? I think those are the questions you have to ask with Erik Karlsson. And do you have a preferred destination for Erik Karlsson? Like, even whether it's one of these two teams or maybe a dark horse?
I've always thought Seattle would be a great landing spot for him. That's a team that looks like it needs. I mean, they have done. He's a pretty good offensive defenseman, but if they can add Karlsson, like, that would just make them. It would also give that nice star power, that star player that can help that market out a little bit more too. And I think they have the assets and the cap space to get that deal done too.
Would San Jose trade Erik Karlsson within the division? I guess we just saw Ottawa trade DeBrincat in the division, so maybe that's an overrated narrative that you don't want to trade within the division, especially two teams. They're going in completely opposite directions right now.
Yeah, like the Florida Panthers were another team that were potentially interested in Karlsson, but they have so many cap issues. They gave up almost all their assets to go for the last few years. I just don't know if they have the assets to get that done. in a way, maybe bringing in Karlsson would make them an even worse defensive team. So I wouldn't hate that. But I do. Seattle's a team that I would like to see them go and swing for that one.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. Let us know in the comments as well. Where do you want to see Erik Karlsson end up? Man, what an electric player when he's on his game. There's still a couple electric free agents out there. Most notably, Vladimir Tarasenko, who changed agents about a week ago. Is he any closer to finding a home? What would be the best fit for him? Thomas Tatar, underrated, I would say, at this point in his career. Where could he end up? We'll let you know a few other names next. You're listening to Locked On NHL. Today's episode is brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. It's the official sportsbook of Locked On. It's FanDuel. Take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel. I know I had Vladimir Guerrero Jr. in the home run derby. I had to sweat it out. Him going back-to-back in the semis and then finals was criminal, but he made it work. He gets the win, and so did I at FanDuel. And go check out FanDuel right now and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 that you can spend betting everything from the money line to over-unders to who you think's going to hit the first home run, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you can get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel. It's the official partner of Major League Baseball and the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, final segment. You're listening to Locked On NHL, your team every day. Shout out to the everydayers out there that not only ride with us here at Locked On NHL, but you can also subscribe to your favorite team. There's a show for every team across the National Hockey League, from the Sens and Leafs to Seattle, San Jose, and Anaheim, where the second overall pick, Leo Carlsson, has just signed his entry-level contract. It's going to be such a great year for rookies, but the old vets still want their say in this as well. David, one, how surprised are you that Vladimir Tarasenko still hasn't signed a contract? And where do you think could be a fit? Because we've heard the Florida Panthers are interested, the San Jose Sharks are interested, the Ottawa Senators are interested, and of course, like you said, the Carolina Hurricanes are always sniffing around when a offensively talented player becomes available.
Yeah, this one surprised me, considering how hard it is to score goals, and that's something that Vladimir Tarasenko has done very well. I thought he actually showed a bit more of that playmaking ability too when he went to New York, right? Like, I've known him mostly as a sniper, and he showed in New York he's got some ability to set up guys. So I'm surprised he's still available, because he's 31 years old. That's not, I know that people have this thing about players over 30 years of age, but this is a player that's still very productive, even in his 30s. A lot of teams could use help with their power play. He would be the perfect fit in that regard. And yeah, I'm just wondering, the change of agents, I'm curious to know what exactly led to that. Was that because a deal fell through and that was the agent's fault, or the agent kind of misvalued him on the market and that potentially led to him not signing? Like, this gives me a little bit of that Nazem Kadri vibes too, like where he didn't sign right away and we were kind of wondering, where is he going to go? And then eventually Calgary had that really nice offer for him and he ended up signing there. So for me, Tarasenko will have his pick. I think there's definitely teams that still have the space to add him, but they got to be careful, right? Because, this is a player that's could want term. I don't know how much term I would want to give to a 31-year-old who is a pure offensive player.
I almost think that at this point, and I know he's 31, you probably want to get a 3 or 4 year deal, but if you go to the place with the right fit and maybe take a little less this year, you could cash in on a 2-3 year deal next offseason again if the cap goes up. Because where I think Tarasenko is not in a good spot is that there's not much money to go around. There's not a whole lot of teams with cap space. You like all the teams that I mentioned there, Carolina has the most cap room. They've got like $5 million. Like, Ottawa's got 5, but they have Shane Pinto to sign, so they probably have closer to 3 at the end of the day. And I mean, Florida has none. San Jose has a lot, but is that the right spot? Like, I don't know. I'm very, very curious with this because, again, he's kind of got himself where everyone else has made the move to go get the player that they're looking for. And I almost feel the same way with like Winnipeg with Scheifele and Hellebuck. Like, it's tough to move players at this point because there's not much flexibility under the cap. So if I'm Tarasenko, I probably go to Carolina for whatever they're offering. And I just say, look, you guys need a trigger man. I can play on the other side of Andrei Svechnikov, and I can be the setup guy for him. I could take him under my wing a little bit, put me with Aho in the middle, and let us cook for a year. And I think that would give him the best shot at a Stanley Cup as well.
And let's not forget, and some people might say they might be talking about his injury past, which is true, but I think also that had a lot to do with St. Louis bungling his health situation as well. Carolina's had a lot of issues with their own best offensive players not being healthy. Pacioretty losing him, right? Then you got Svechnikov losing him just before the playoffs. That was a huge blow for them. Like if you're Carolina, you need as much offense as you're going to find. And if their biggest offensive upgrade is going to be Michael Bunting, hate to say it, but that's not going to be enough for you, especially.
Oh, you don't think Brendan Lemieux is going to be a big offensive upgrade?
Yeah, unless they allow punching the puck into the net back, if that's allowed again in the NHL,
Punching? What about biting?
I don't even know what he's thinking. He's just a complete brickhead. He's got nothing up there. Bad guy, bad player, but what a joke he is.
All-time soundbite Brady Tkachuk after being bit by Brendan Lemieux.
Maybe he'll take a bite out of the goalie and hope the puck just gets by him.
By the way, 5th NHL team in 9 seasons for Brendan Lemieux.
Oh.
Yikes.
Who has more, him or Anthony Duclair?
Yeah, seriously. Well, Duclair looked like he finally found a home. I think that was more of a cap thing where they felt restriction because he played really well, I think. But I think San Jose is a great spot for Duclair. Just a side note, because, man, he's going to play top line there, and he's on the final year of his contract. So he's looking to get paid next season or even be added to a contender at a deadline. I don't know how Ottawa got 2 seconds for him, which it was for Dzingel. They got 2 seconds and Anthony Duclair. Wild. They actually gave him away for nothing. Didn't even qualify him because he wanted to represent himself, bet on himself, ended up getting another deal from Florida. But outside of Tarasenko, who's the best free agent available for you that's left on the open market?
I mean, depending on how you feel about him, I think Patrick Kane.
Okay, I was going to say, don't say Patrice Bergeron because we know he's either going back to Boston or retiring.
No, I can't do that. I think Patrick Kane's one out there. You're looking at the points per game. Like Tarasenko's there. Thomas Tatar, very productive player, very versatile player. I'm surprised that he didn't find a home already. And I know that there's concerns about his health, but Jonathan Taves for me. How does a contender not want to see if they can get Jonathan Taves to sign up for one more year? One last go for a Stanley Cup, even in a lower role, third center. I wanted the Leafs to sign him as their third line center because I think he still has a lot to offer. He was a decent player in Chicago despite the health concerns, and he played over 17 minutes, and he had 31 points in 53 games while dealing with injuries all year. Give him a 1 year. Get 1 year. Let's see if you can win another cup and help kind of solidify his Hall of Fame status.
Okay, I like that. I'm interested that Matthew Dumba, who was kind of a whipping boy, for lack of a better term, in Minnesota. A lot of people thought his defensive struggles were kind of glaring for him. But if I'm a team looking to get physical, looking to get a bit tougher on the back end, who also, like Matt Dumba, when I think of him, I think of his slap shot. Like, he's got one of the best cannons in the National Hockey League. Like, I think if you can get Matt Dumba on your third pair at a reasonable dollar figure, like, I think you're laughing. Like, I think he should be a guy who's off the market soon. An undercover name I'll give you is Pius Suter, who's like younger, not going to command a whole lot of money. But man, he's productive. Last season with Detroit had 24 points. Like, he's the kind of guy I think would be a really good bottom six option. And in 79 games, he took 3 minor penalties. That's what you can't have in your bottom six on a competitive team. You can't have guys taking penalties. So I think that Pia Suter would be an undercover name of a guy who still isn't signed. But I'm with you, man. For me, it's Thomas Tatar, who should he'll help any middle six he goes to. And really interested to see what happens next. David, any final thoughts on today's show?
It's going to be very interesting to see how see where these final guys go. We're in this like lull period where not a lot of news is coming out. I just feel like one thing is going to break is going to burst the dam. It always happens in the offseason where someone signs, someone gets traded, and then all the other GMs kind of wake up a little bit.
I think we're waiting on Erik Karlsson is where I'm going to go with that, because Carolina rumored to be in on Tarasenko, all these other guys. But if they get Erik Karlsson, do they have the money for that? So we'll find out. Hopefully by next week, we'll have an answer to that. But for today, we say goodbye. We'll hand it over to Thursday. Power rankings coming up here on Locked On NHL. For today, we say goodbye. For David Morasuti, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been the Locked On NHL podcast. It's your team every day.